If the future were in your hands.
The daughter's screaming. The house is burning.
Would you change it?
Hurry up, hurry up! It's not too late.
Touch this man's hand, and you are in the grip of the dead zone.
I've had another episode.
Only the imagination of author Stephen King could take you there.
Johnny, wait!
With a power that alters the future lives of those you love.
You want to kill your own son? I want you out of here.
I'm scared, Dad.
Or of those you fear.
I've had a vision that I am going to be president of the United States someday, and nobody, I mean nobody, gonna stop me.
Is it a power for good or for evil?
If God has seen fit to bless you with this gift, you should use it.
Bless me?
You're a devil. Sent for me.
Who are you?
Who sent you?
I'm scared, sir. What's happening to me?
We're gonna get married. Johnny, don't leave me, please.
Don't you see how clear it all is? Not only can you see the future,
I can change it.
Stillson! 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 Stillson!
I was there, I saw it.
Put your hand on the scanning screen and you'll go down in history with me.
I saw his face. I stood there. I did nothing.
Johnny!
Stephen King, The Dead Zone.
All right, guys, we're here for a very special episode of Horror in 1983. Let me introduce the guest before we get into this. First up is Duncan McLeish from the podcast Under the Stairs podcast and numerous spin-offs. He's been on this show a few times. He was in 1980 for Cruisin', 1981 for Scanners, which fits this show pretty well, and 1982 for Durfan. How's it going, Duncan?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for inviting me back. I'm assuming it's because I haven't made mistakes yet, or if I have, you've just neglected to tell me. So that's either way's fine with me. So thanks very much.
Truth be told, I don't watch them afterwards. I just slap them together and throw them online. So there's probably plenty of mistakes. No, just kidding. I appreciate you being on here. And next up is a first-time guest here, Dennis Capicik, and he came highly recommended by our friend Art Ediger. Now, Dennis has written for a bunch of different kind of websites and magazines and things like that. Diabolique, Spaghetti Western Digest, Video Watchdog, and he's worked with Arrow a bit. So those are some pretty heavy hitters in there. How's it going, Dennis?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. You ready to talk about the Dead Zone, right?
Yes. And thanks for having me on. It's great to be on here. Yeah, I've been watching this show for a while, so I'm glad to be a part of it. So thanks again.
Awesome. I'm glad to have good guests and first-time guests as well. So, yeah, we are doing the 1983 movie The Dead Zone, which brought together, I think, the only collaboration that David Cronenberg ever made of a Stephen King film. Dino De Laurentiis produced. Debra Hill's involved with producing this thing. So we have a amazing cast in this, but I just want to talk briefly about how kind of Stephen King was in the 80s and how The Dead Zone got started. I'm sure you guys have some more information on it, but I'm just going to briefly touch on this. So this was originally with Lorimar at one point, probably in the very early 80s. I can't imagine they got the book after 1979. King was on a run, Carrie in 74, Salem's Lot, and The Shining. And many of these were made into movies, and most of them did fairly well. His collaboration with King, with George Romero in 82 with Creepshow. So they were made 3 actual movies of Stephen King stuff in 1983, some of which actually were written after The Dead Zone, but we have Cujo, Christine, and of course The Dead Zone. Cronenberg was coming off Videodrome, which was kind of one of his most original films, and he wanted to do something, I guess, a little bit less original, maybe written bigger audience and things of that nature. So he was offered this movie with Lorimar originally, but things didn't work out, and when Dino De Laurentiis picked up the picture, he actually agreed with it because Debra Hill had a choice between Walter Hill and Cronenberg. Walter Hill was working on 48 Hours, so boom, they went with David Cronenberg, which was a fine choice. And what we have here is, I guess, the saddest horror thriller sci-fi movie of 1983, I would say. So anyone to talk about the a little bit of pre-production and whatnot of this movie? Anything else anybody wants to add?
I suppose from my point of view, it does surprise, if you experience Cronenberg, like his run of movies, specifically from Shivers through to right up to The Dead Zone, like when you're going through that, you can see like he's really kind of crafted a very singular voice in body horror, or what we now like kind of grouped as body horror, that it does feel like an unconventional pick for him to go with, you know, like the works of like Stephen King, which doesn't lean necessarily at all into body horror. But actually, if you take a step back and you look at where his career goes for the rest of the 80s, it is an incredibly smart pick, because it is if you look at it, it's probably one of the least David Cronenberg movies that you can imagine from the 80s, but actually reflects a lot of where he goes 90s and beyond, where he actually really starts tackling things that cover less the body horror and more the human psyche. So in some ways, this is very much a proto example of where he would go, kind of examining the human condition, emotions in the brain, rather than necessarily things that you kind of necessarily go on. It's also worth mentioning that this, like you're talking about the run Stephen King had, the run that David Cronenberg has from essentially Rabid right through to Naked Lunch is, for me, like almost impeccable. It's one of those runs that when you look at it, every movie is interesting, unique, and remarkable. That once again, the fact that this one is a kind of detour, but a smart detour, like really works for me in terms of. And then King himself, like, just seemed to be the guy to go. Like, you look at what we get now necessarily with Stephen King adaptations. It's surprising that in that short period, almost everything was filmable. And nowadays, not a lot is filmable. It's very, very interesting when you contextualize it a lot.
Yeah, no, that's I agree with you very much. Yeah, this listening to some of the commentaries, I saw that Michael Felsher regarded this as a transitional horror film, or transitional film, I should say, for Cronenberg. And I very much agree with that. But I do have to think that it still has that Cronenbergian kind of feel, where it is still has some elements of body horror in it. I mean, just because he is going through a change, just the way, you know, his rehabilitation, the way he's walking, he definitely has changed. And it's very subtle in this film, but I think it's still, Cronenberg definitely added a little bit of his own personality to this film as well. What makes it so unique among the Stephen King, you know, adaptations. So
yeah, there is a scene with a pair of scissors that we'll talk about later on that in the hands of any other director wouldn't have that nearly the same impact.
Absolutely.
And intelligent too, how he films that scene. I was going to go there, but I do want to mention, I guess, does anybody want to tackle the plot on this one? Well, I can do it if you guys do not want to. It's a fairly simple plot.
I mean, yeah, but I suppose, is it worth from your point of view, like, remarking on how he manages to concisely derive the plot from the novel? Because be honest, it was just the first time going through I did the audiobook. I think we all did the audiobook route this time around, and I was surprised at how dense that book is. Like, it's a 16-hour audiobook, and there is so much detail that is essentially taken out in order to make this movie one run, and to kind of cohesively tell a slightly different version of the story, which is a surprisingly interesting version of the story without all those individual set pieces. It still does feel at times slightly episodic, but the way it's wrangled together is really, really interesting. And I suppose from the thing I would throw back to you, Dave, is from a plot point of view, putting those two things together, do you feel that there is a way that you could have introduced more from the book in here, or do you actually think what they managed to strip out actually serves the film for what Cronenberg's purpose actually is, which is to tell more of the kind of tragic human condition story, which is maybe it's in the book, but it's maybe not the deriving, like, through line of the novel?
I actually think Cronenberg was incredibly intelligent and the writer, actually, Jeffrey, I can't remember, Obrow or something, who's not a horror writer. I probably mispronounced his name, but
Jeffrey Boam.
Cut out. Yeah, he cut out the things that King wanted in there with the Stillson and the serial killer stuff. He cut that out, and I think focusing on just Johnny works a lot better, because you can't add all that stuff in there. And the one thing I do want to mention when we're talking about Stephen King is Stephen King is like the household name of horror, right? He's the suburban guy for every house mom and every person in the world to read. he makes horror approachable, and that's why I love Stephen King for that reason. But I do think Stephen King got incredibly lucky with the people that directed his films early on. When you think of them, they're the best genre directors of all time. And his
Insane
movies,
when you look at the list of directors,
Murderers
like
Row,
from Carrie right through. Like right through to even the end of even up to Pet Sematary, the list of directors are really just like the creme de la creme of what we now consider the masters of horror. So,
and they took liberties in cutting things they should have. While some later directors probably didn't cut things they should have, and the movie suffered for it. And I think that that's a major difference in that too, right? Like I think that this is gonna sound weird. Like maybe people are too afraid to step on King's toes later on, and some stuff's not adaptable from a book.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I think Jeffrey Boam did such a fantastic job with that, because it went through so many different iterations, like the scripted. So I think when he finally grasped it, he broke it down to those three main acts, the accident, the Castle Rock killer, and then the stuff with Greg Stillson, which I think was great. And it made it more about Johnny and not so much like in the book or the audiobook, as you guys listen to. There's a lot of parallel storylines there between Greg, Sarah, and even Johnny, all three of them. So put that into a script, they had a lot of difficulties doing that. So I think that's why Cronenberg, he was so happy with this Jeffrey Boam script, because it's just slick and it's just streamlined and it tells enough, and you can get so much just from little aspects in the film. You don't need all those details like King does. It's a great book, but it's the same story, but just told very differently,
Yeah, the Greg Stillwell stuff is really interesting, because tracking him in the novel, it's really fascinating, because you do, like, at every stage you get the indicator of where the man is going to be. So by the time you get to that, there's a degree of pathos as the reader that justifies the action, because you've got all the context in the background. The way it's condensed in this movie works just as well without that, without that history. That, like, interactions and conversations with other characters where they're saying, well, you need to watch out for this guy, or there's something that I don't quite trust. And well, obviously it's difficult not to talk about the current political climate and mention the story itself. But like, those parallels are really interesting. The way it's managed to be condensed in there, but not lose any of the, well, that feels like a jump for a character like Johnny. Why would he do that at the end of the... That's a testament to how well it's been rewritten for a movie. Because you don't lose any of those. You get all that condensed very, very quickly in that kind of final 25 minutes. So very, very, very well done.
And
yeah.
I was going to say, they also condense something that I love that they do. So instead of having the World War II character in the book, who I think was like a grandfather or somebody, and he says, he gives the Hitler line, I had to kill the son of a bitch. I love that they use Herbert Lom, because
I
the
love
delivery,
Herbert Lom and everything.
He's one of the best of all time. And he's just one of my favorite actors. And his delivery on that line and using him to give that line was such a intelligent and smart thing to do, to condense the book and add the characters. And this is a weird throw out here, because I doubt that many people have actually read the novelization. Oh, it's not even a novelization, but the Dirty Dozen book, right? Because the way they adapted that book, I love the book, but the movies, it's one of my favorite movies. They adapted that. There were so many fuck ups in that book. They were all horrible people for the most part. So what they did, they're like, we can't have 12 monsters in this movie. So they took 4 monsters from the book and they condensed them all into Maggot. So Maggot is pretty much the ultimate villain in that movie. So they did the kind of same thing where they took all that and condensed it into one character. So they're condensing characters and splitting these kind of things. Like they cut a lot from the Brooke Adams' husband in here, Sarah's husband and stuff like that, which I thought was a smart way to go about it. And again, they talk about visualization. Now, when the mother and stuff in the commentaries, they say, well, instead of telling you all the stuff with the serial killer, you take a look at the house, you see how the mom interacts with everybody, and you immediately know it's a mama's boy. It's all the generic thousands of serial killers that we had. Edmund Kemper, take your pick, whichever one. Ed Gein, one of those mass, like infamous criminals. Like, so you know exactly. Norman Bates even. So you get it.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things of that film. All the visual aspects in that just helps that movie give you all those details, and that's all you need to know. You don't need to know, like the children's wallpaper that's up in Frank Dodd's room, and it looks like a child's bedroom. So you know already what's going on. So you don't need all that background in the book. In the book, there's a lot of background with him, and it's pretty vile. It would have been a very different film or even Greg Stillson when he's first introduced, in that horrible scene where he's kicking that dog to death. Like that would be a very tough way to introduce those characters. But the way that Cronenberg does it and Jeffrey Boam with his wonderful script, like it's perfect, I think. I mean, it really is just such a perfect, tight, lean script.
There's like about 3 or 4 different movies that could come out this movie, like focusing on different aspects that would make this movie completely different. I think like I mentioned before, the kind of psychological tragedy of the movie is what they focused on, and actually I think it's the smartest choice overall. Is once again, it's the movie that where we are now in 2026 is always the one that I genuinely get a little bit kind of the inevitable remake will happen. It's going to come at some point. They're going to link it to more recent world events, and I don't know how that works because I think the subtlety in which it's handled, in the script and the adaptation is so nuanced and so well done that I think even picking at that gives you a different feeling throughout the viewing of the movie. So yeah, it's like I can't stress that enough. Unless you understand, unless you've done what we've done, which is essentially been through the book and then viewed the film, I don't think you can appreciate how clever. Like there are other adaptations that don't go through that kind of. This is the story I want to tell. And Stephen King is always going to be. It's his work. It came from him. He's the author. He's always going to have a vested interest that it represents the vision that he put down on the page, and that's understandable. It's his story, but like Dennis mentioned there, I think the beauty of film as a medium is like you're taking a 16-hour audiobook into an hour and 40 movie. There are going to have to be compromises there. Interesting enough that the compromises that made just elevate the movie. So,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely elevates the movie, and I still that's why it still remains one of the best King adaptations, I think, to this very day. Yeah. I mean, and it's one that Stephen King, I think, was very happy with, despite all the changes. Unlike, let's say, The Shining, which he still, I think, to this day is detests.
2026. Come on, King.
He's bitter. I think he did mention that it's a good movie, but just a terrible adaptation.
Yeah.
Which I think is funny though, because sometimes I'll like something that's a terrible adaptation, but of just a fun movie. I don't know if it's a good like stuff like that. But yeah, I think The Shining's a great movie, and I actually think it's. I don't know. I argue. I think it's better in the book. It's been years since I've read the book, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, the books. I keep coming back to the ending of the Book of the Shining is nowhere near as interesting as the movie version. Like it works on the page because you've been reading it for like 3 weeks. The movie it does something different. I get what you say. He's invested in the character. He had a lot invested in Jack Torrance. So when you get to that, I think Johnny Smith on screen compared to the page is not remarkably different. David Cronenberg isn't rewriting the character with Jeffrey Boam. They're not creating some like completely different interpretation where he's like instantly mean or instantly deranged, or you go through a character arc with him. I think a lot of the issues that King has with The Shining is purely because from the moment you see Jack Nicholson, you go, he's a bit crazy, slightly deranged. Okay, there's a bit of that in there, I think.
And I think that says a lot about the ending on The Dead Zone too, where I think this film version, I actually like it better than the book. There's that whole epilogue with the letters, and she's at the cemetery, and she's kind of like, it still has that kind of love story ending, like both of them, that's essentially what the film really is. If you look through it, it is a love story, but the ending of the film where he's in her arms, she's got blood on her white dress, and it's just that last image. I mean, it's kind of bittersweet, but beautiful at the same time, so it's terrific. Yeah. I wouldn't change that. And I really do enjoy it much more than the book.
Yeah. And again, it's a condense, instead of having that just be a random child, they got Brooke Adams into that scene, and it just works so well to have that dramatic thing. And I don't know, man, this is actually probably one of the best adapted. And I think all 3 of these movies this year, if you've read the books, are actually better than the source material. I think that they cut the right stuff. I think that these are probably, if you look at it, 1983, I think has 3 of the top 20 best King adaptations, maybe top 10 in it, just alone in that year, which is really intense for me because I had seen Cujo in years rewatching it. And I was like, oh man, this is good too. The book's good.
Cujo totally holds up. Yeah, it
Cujo
terrified
holds
me as a
up.
kid, but as an adult, it still terrifies me.
Yeah, and I think Christine is still one of Carpenter's very best films. I mean, the more I watch it, the more I'm up there. Yeah, I think it's amazing.
It's such a flex from Carpenter as well. You know what I mean? Like you watch that movie and it is like front to back is the complete packet. It's him firing on all cylinders, and it looks like an easy movie for him. And I think that's why, like all the other ones, you can kind of see the compromise and struggle. Various different things. The practical effects aren't where they need to be for certain things, or he's having to fight with the studio to do certain things. And you watch Christine, just front to back, it just seems easy and effortless. And yeah, it's like it's just for not like you think about it, it's like Stephen King has, like we were mentioning, like when you list down those, like you're like arguably the greatest, most prolific horror writer of like our time, and like we'll probably be considered that for generations to come. And then in this window, you have arguably some of the greatest horror directors of all time just adapting your stuff, like putting it out there and creating some of the best movies of the 1980s. It's nuts. And it just keeps going. That's the thing about it. The beauty of them is you see them as kids, and you grow up with these movies and you get that experience then, and as an adult you view them in a completely different light and appreciate them for further things. Like as a kid, I relate to the kids in movies and scared by the adults. As an adult, I actually understand why the adults are behaving particular ways in movies, and I get a new appreciation for you grow into the movies. Just very much like you grow into. I appreciate Stephen King books completely different now as a 44-year-old than I did when I was reading them when I was 16, because I was purely in it for the scares. And now I'm reading it going like, these characters are really deep and nuanced. Not all of them, but like you get that different viewing. And I think the movie adaptations honor that throughout, where there are movies that I've watched in the 80s that have been adapted from source material. And you realize that the first viewing as a teenager was probably right. The characters are as deep as a paddling pool. There is no further depth in that, and the source material doesn't age all that well either. So it's kind of miraculous.
Or you get an adaptation that is completely held back by the people that produce the movie, like The Keep, and you read that book and you're like, this is not that movie. This movie, The Keep's so much deeper as a book than it is a film, but still interesting nonetheless. I do want to talk about the people behind the scenes, because I think that, of course, we have the 3 big, and I mean this is like a kind of a lovely word. We have like the 3 kind of heavy weirdos that kind of put together this movie, from a very like surface level. You have King, Cronenberg, and Walken, who are 3 cult juggernauts, right? So you take those mixture of kind of different personalities and you see that on the surface. But besides that, I definitely want to mention Debra Hill's involvement. She obviously was such a driving force that's not really appreciated. And you always hear people say, well, Debra Hill's underrated on that. And then you start hearing how involved with all these things like the Halloween movies and stuff and all these other productions and Carpenter and working with Cronenberg. And you're like, oh, geez, wow, she was really somebody that got a lot of shit done. And definitely you see her all over the Fangoria articles mentioned and everything. Seems to be a major driving force behind the Dead Zone.
I think that's fair to say. I think, like, you're right. I think overlooked. I think new appreciation now, because we have more sources, like with the internet being readily available you can click on an IMDb or you can click on a Wikipedia and you can see all the stuff that she was involved with. But prevalent, like heavily involved with some of my favorite movies from the late 70s right through the 80s. All over them, actually, to be fair.
And she came on board actually when Dino De Laurentiis actually bought the property, because when it didn't work out at Lorimar Pictures, originally actually Stanley Donen, the guy who did Singing in the Rain and Charade, was going to direct this film with Sidney Pollack producing it at Lorimar, but then all that fell through, and they weren't even going to do any of the cool, when Johnny's in his visions, they were just going to talk about it but not show any of these, which I think would have been a big mistake. But then Lorimar kind of went under, and then Dino De Laurentiis bought the property, and that's how Debra Hill came on board. And Cronenberg was actually visiting his friend, I think, John Landis, and that's where he met Debra Hill. And then, yeah, the film was offered to Cronenberg. Actually, it was offered to Cronenberg when it was still at Lorimar, but then 4 years later, it came back to him. So he was very excited to do it, especially after Videodrome, which was really difficult for him. And, it was an original script. The script wasn't even finished when they were making Videodrome. So it was he was very happy to do this. So, yeah, I thought that was actually really cool. And I didn't even know, but Andrei Konchalovsky, the guy who directed Runaway Train, he actually did a script for this film too, which I was shocked. But they said that didn't work because he wrote it in Russian. They had to translate it into Italian for Dino De Laurentiis, then back to English. So I can only imagine what a mess that would have been. That's
exactly. I do. Since we mentioned Dino De Laurentiis, we do have to mention he's an unsung hero of great films. I know people
he's right through everything, man.
Make
honestly,
fun of him because he's this larger than life character, but he produced so many good movies. And on a lesser level, I will say like Cannon Group. They produce a lot of wackadoo shit, some good, some not so good. But these people pretty much, when you think of all your favorite movies from the 80s, it was one of these people that had their hand in it. It's not usually the big studios, which is completely crazy.
Able to raise a lot of money very quickly for projects, like genuinely, and give the projects the money that they needed. Like you like there are like certain producers that are. I'm not saying he didn't cut corners or restrict certain things because I don't know the ins and outs of that. But like at no point am I watching this movie feeling that there's a budgetary constraint. And you get that with a lot of these movies where there is lavish set pieces or great on location shooting. And a lot of that comes with being able to finance behind that. So like, yeah, these fingerprints are all over some of your favorite movies. And yes, it is very easy to poke fun. And there are plenty of stories about people that didn't get on necessarily all that well, or projects that were mothballed because of involvement or conflicts. But yeah, like if you take a step back, once again, it is incredible. And whether rightly or wrongly, I think like all these things need to come together for these movies to happen. And I think like sometimes we jump straight into, I love the format of what you do, Dave. I think sometimes we jump right in and we talk about like the story and the twists and are the effects great and all the rest. And what you get on that is of merit and it's very worth talking about. But sometimes the stories behind these projects, how they get to the point, are just as interesting, and they actually in some way make you appreciate what you see after the fact because of all that's went through.
I agree. Yeah, apparently this was a very easy shoot for Cronenberg. He had a great time doing it compared to all his others. And he said, it's, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but there's a great article in the Cinefantastique here.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Tim Lucas.
Tim
right?
Lucas. It's a beautiful, like on set. Like he's on set, he interviews everyone. It's fantastic. And, he talks about how it was such an easy shoot and that Dino De Laurentiis, he is a bit of an egomaniac. I mean, he's been in the business who knows how many decades, right? But he was very easy to work with. He comes up with ideas, but he let Cronenberg do his own ideas. And, so it was, Cronenberg said it was actually very nice working with him, between him and Debra Hill and everybody, that it was such a good collaboration. And still, he almost alluded to it was one of his very favorite collaborations, with all the featurettes and stuff that I've seen. I mean, maybe it's changed since then.
It wasn't a Canadian tax shelter movie, right? Like the Scanners,
No.
like we mentioned that. Scanners wasn't, you could tell that was just like on a fly. Like when you watch that and the script, you're like, that wasn't even a completed script. Like just like Videodrome, like you said, that I didn't know that was not a completed script because Videodrome hurts my head. Like when I watch that, I'm just like, I don't fucking, you know what I mean? Like it hurts my head, and that's a good thing. But like the classic sci-fi movies of the 50s, sometimes you start thinking of how things work and you're just like, what's that meme with all the
way through, like he's arguing with people about his choice of casting in Scanners. Like it's just like everything feels like those early days feel experimental and also riddled with headaches. Like problems that you as a director, you don't want to have to be like, you are the director, you want to be shooting the vision, you want to be putting like what you have in your brain on the screen, and you have, the further you get in and the more inclined you are to studios and whatnot, you have people that firewall you to make that vision. And like a lot of the early Cronenberg stuff feels like he he's juggling directing a movie and making sure his script kind of works and doing rewrites and then dealing with actors and then dealing with production, like a lot of things that on bigger budgets the director never really gets lost in the weeds with. They will still butt heads, but they have people around them kind of making sure that they can do what they need to do. Like the fact that, like I said before, Dead Zone to me feels very much like Christine. It feels like an effortless movie, and that's reflected on everything Dennis has just said there. You know what I mean? Like an easy. It does feel like right, and we can relax into this, and it also helps when you're surrounded by, like, and then, like this movie, like a lot of the casting is not how like
Perfect.
when even listening to the book, having seen the movie first. Like, I don't know if my interpretation of the Johnny Smith character from even the audiobook is Christopher Walken. Like, I don't know if I equate those two together, even though I've seen the movie before. But actually, it's genius casting. Like, it really, really, really works for me in a way where, once again, in a different cast, any different lead performer, I don't know how that works throughout. It's like it's lightning in a bottle sometimes with how these things come together and how they end up on the screen. So all those things being off his plate and being more relaxed, I that works its way through into how the actors feel, how the crew are, and then you end up with a movie that does feel settled. And I mean that in the nicest possible way when talking about a horror movie. It just feels very grounded.
Yeah, it's a perfect cast. I agree with you there. It is perfect. And Cronenberg originally he wanted Nicholas Campbell to play the role of Johnny Smith. But Dino De Laurentiis, he vetoed that idea and he got Christopher Walken. And a lot of the cast, yeah, I agree. And a lot of the cast, even like Herbert Lom, is Dino De Laurentiis got him originally, So it's really interesting, that great collaboration. But like the cast is, I can't imagine anyone else in those roles. Yeah. Even Anthony Zerbe, like he is so good as that. As the father of that kid, like he's just amazing in that. Yeah, when I was reading the book, I couldn't get that image. In the book it was a different name, but of that father, who almost loses his child. Like I just couldn't think of a different person. Like Zerbe was just perfect in that.
Him in the armchair with the drink as the phone rings, like he needs say no words, and you can feel the weight of what has happened on his face. It's incredible casting. It's incredible performance.
Well, that's one thing about the book that I think they do in the movie, but I think the book did this one a little bit better. Is he's very much a Jesus Christ-like character, where he doesn't want the power, right? He doesn't want it necessarily. And although he is doing the right thing and saving people, it makes him basically an outcast to the point where he's ridiculed and shunned away from everyone. So it's like, it's not a blessing in a lot of ways. It's a curse. So he basically saves all those people in the movie and the book, or the kid at least, but it doesn't help him because no one wants to be around him anymore because they're scared of him and they don't understand. So it's just a completely twisted, warped kind of idea, right? That the ultimate sacrifice, that altruism of himself to sacrifice himself at the end of this movie, and no one's going to know why you did it. It's not like nowadays where people go on the streets and videotape themselves giving a homeless person $1. And then post it on Facebook and shit like that. It's the complete opposite of that. Before I do want to dive into the cast, because I want to talk about the people's like careers in the 80s and stuff and whatnot, but I do want to mention the score, because you think David Cronenberg, you think Howard Shore, but this isn't Howard Shore. This is Michael Kamen. And Michael Kamen is a composer that is a guy that I've heard tons of his scores and never put two to two together. I recently rewatched Robin Hood, and I had seen that movie since I was a kid, and I was like, this is a really amazing score. And they were talking about it like Kamen. I was like, oh wow. I was like, this guy is not a household name, but he's a household property. He's done all these scores, and it's like he most certainly is. And then I went to rewatch Dead Zone, and I was like, same guy. And this score is perfect. It's very professional. It's almost melodramatic, but it should be, because it fits with the tone of the sadness and the cold. And it's an excellent score, and it fits the movie. And it's completely different from those big, powerful, dramatic Howard Shore scores that are like I don't even know how to put it, but they're very loud and scary, but also dramatic. And this is not. This is soft and sad and just melodramatic, but perfect.
I like that, because like there aren't like Cronenberg did, like you mentioned before, like his work with Howard Shore is like some of my favorite scores, like from those movies as well. But there does kind of feel like, and we've already kind of touched on it, that kind of, I want to try something different. I want to do something that's a little bit different pace and whatnot. At that point, it's not just not just a whim for him. Like the fact is involved with different people, he's working like from a DP point of view, someone that he'd worked with before. But the score, I think. I don't know how once again how a Howard Shore obviously we're speculating, but I don't know how that sounds on here. But there's a degree of whimsy in the score. It's really quite delicate in parts, and that's kind of what this movie needs. If it's too overpowering, then like what we do is distracting from the performances of the actors. Is like I said, all these things are very nuanced and very cleverly put together in a way which, to maybe a lesser eye, you watch this, eat your popcorn, you don't pick them up, but all these things are integral to the overall viewing, even if they are slighter, even if they aren't the most prominent thing, like a score on something even like Naked Lunch. But what you have here is something that's really quite delicate, and like the inflection points as well, even the motifs that follow the character of Johnny are really, really well done. Like the original book has all the stuff about, the allusions to the original accident, and, it builds a lot of those building blocks in there. We strip a lot of that away, so the score kind of has to inflect tender moments as well. And you mentioned before the fact that he, as a character, is like, you imagine all the stuff that's in the book that kind of has to detail the struggle that he goes through as a character, knowing that this power does help, but at the same time, it doesn't really make him any better off. The way this movie decides to do that is essentially the opening of a cupboard full of letters and parcels and things that's been sent to his dad that's passed on him, where people that are desperate, that this is going to make their life better, and he just can't cope with it, but he also at the same time can't throw them away. So they remain as this kind of totem of misery in a cupboard that he's aware of, and it's all there, and he could do stuff to make these people better, but he chooses not. I don't even know where my point's going. Suffice to say, I just love the way it's all constructed, and the score is a huge part of that. It's not overstated. If it's overstated, it takes away from what's happening on the screen.
Yeah, it perfectly accentuates the sadness and the loneliness of Johnny Smith's, Christopher Walken's character. It's just perfect. It's almost inseparable. And I think Howard Shore, when you look at some of his subsequent scores, he took a piece of what he saw of what Michael Kamen did. I mean, at times you almost think it is a bit of a later Howard Shore score, like the way it's a terrific score, and I think it adds immeasurably to the film. I mean, that opening alone, the credit sequence, so simple, so beautiful, and it's part of it's a score, and the wintry landscapes, and then those little blocks, the blacks coming in, which almost look like blacks in the picture, like the dead zones, in Johnny Smith's mind. Like, it's just, I mean, it sets up the tone of the film perfectly. And I wanted to bring back one thing, Dave, that you said earlier about Johnny, how he was like a Christ-like figure, and you never know like why he did certain things and how people would react. And I think Cronenberg at one point said that the film could almost be looked at almost subversive with that whole assassination thing, because you're like, you never find out why he did it, and it's like, as an audience member, you're almost complicit in the act with it, because it's like, well, are you condoning this, but you never know why he did it. And I think it's a very interesting point. I never thought of that. I thought that was very interesting when Cronenberg said that in one of the many interviews I've seen.
Yeah. Diving into the cast, we should bury the lead here. I mean, Christopher Walken is one of the most interesting, probably memorable, and I would say greatest actors of his generation. And this year, he also had a very oddball movie come out, and I imagine he didn't have a very good time on this Douglas Trumbull movie, Brainstorm, where Natalie Wood was obviously died while they were making that movie, and they had to kind of patch it together. They almost abandoned the project, but Walken was in that one, and that's a very bizarre, strange film, and I think incredibly uneven ending. Well, this ending sticks to landing perfectly. And it's just an odd thing where his trajectory in his career, he had already done Annie Hall and The Deer Hunter, so he was a name, but I don't know how big of a name he was. Obviously, I think that only people that were kind of alive at that time and were kind of watching could kind of say where it was, and I wasn't. So I mean, if anybody, I don't think Duncan, you weren't even really alive to that. I don't know if Dennis was,
I would have been 2 years old.
Yeah.
So not watching The Dead Zone because I imagine my parents would not allow. I wouldn't have been able to remember it anyway. But yeah, like Christopher Walken to me, I think the earliest memory I have of him as a performer is much. It may even be and maybe even be something as kind of, even though it's a tiny role, might even be something like Pulp Fiction. I think
I would
might be
agree,
my
yeah.
first experience, like noticeably, and that's what it's like. It's less than like it's like a 2 minute sequence, and going, this guy's like the way he talks, the inflections, it's strange. By the mid 90s, fully aware of the stuff he was doing, and then like the more you dig into his career, and I also don't know how this translates well to American, or North American, but he's in a Fatboy Slim music video.
Yep.
Fatboy Slim,
Yep.
like
Yeah, we all
it's,
saw that. Yeah.
Thank God, right? So I don't have to explain Fatboy Slim, which saves me time here. But I think that was the first time I realized that he'd actually come from a dance background, because I was like, that's weird casting. And then I was like, and then you learn more about him. Like, a lot of people get hung up on the voice and the delivery, but I think sometimes they overlook the performance. And he is an incredibly the same way Willem Dafoe is an incredibly interesting actor. As those sort of performances that almost steal movies, even in small parts. Those characters are instantly memorable and they carry through. He's also been unafraid in his career to take like big gambles on certain roles. I think it's paid off for him. I think, like you said, it's like one of those actors that, like, just like you close your eyes, you hear the voice, you know it, but you like the way he looks. What's obviously very funny about this one is the amount of time that is spent talking about Sleepy Hollow, from then to go and play the Headless Horseman as well. Like the like just the small things. I just kind of love it. So
Yeah, I had this was the first Cronenberg film I actually saw in the theater. I was 12 years
wow.
old when I saw it, so I was lucky enough. My mom took me to see it. I don't think she knew what she was getting into. But here in Canada, when it played, it wasn't restricted. There was a rating back then called adult accompaniment. So if you were, under 14, as long as you had a parent with you, you could go see it. So we went to see that. And I had known who Christopher Walken was because I remember he won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for Deer Hunter, I think. Yeah. So I kind of knew who he was, but this was really the first film that I was like, and Herbert Lom I knew from the Pink Panther movies. So, it was really interesting seeing all these characters in a film like this, but yeah, I think it's still one of his best film performances of the 80s, right there with At Close Range, which I thought was, those two performances are terrific. And I don't think he's done some great stuff after that. I love how over the top he is in King of New York. His speech in Pulp Fiction, that's pretty unforgettable.
Yeah.
True Romance
too. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I meant True Romance.
Yeah,
I get
True
them always
Romance
mixed
stuff
up.
is so good, and Hopper is equally as good.
Yeah, true. So
the two best actors.
He's terrific, but I think the performance that he gives here in The Dead Zone and even At Close Range is just a different level. I think performance
has range, doesn't it? Like it has like
beautiful range,
full range, which someone like him is not necessarily fully known for. But when you watch it, you see he's dialed in at all points and gives the exact performance you need to convey the emotion that's needed.
And move on to Brooke Adams, who I think is one of the most underrated actresses. I just wish that she would have made 100 movies like this, and she didn't get to do that many. Of course, she's in Invasion of the Body Snatchers from '78. She's also in Shockwaves, which is a pretty cool movie, and she's good. So she's kind of like a mild scream queen, and she did this one and a couple other films. But by the '90s, she's in stuff like The Unborn, which is not a terrible movie, but just. It is what it is. You know what I mean? It's The Unborn with James Karen and mutant babies. It's kind of bizarre, but she's really great in this. And there's the presence of Sarah. I can't imagine anybody else in that role. She's got that small town, like beautiful, nice. Like I just think she's wonderful, and I think she's perfectly cast in this movie, and just feels like has a tender touch to her. And I love that they waited so long, right? The coma and everything. This movie depresses me, especially the book. The first act of this book it's like the most depressing thing in the world to me. Honestly,
I agree. The first 100 pages of the book. He's in a coma. It is depressing. With his mom she was a religious fanatic and everything,
Yeah.
and Sarah's just so distraught, and the father, everyone, they're losing money. Yeah, it is a rough first 100 pages. I
Yeah.
agree.
And that
Yeah.
lost love, I think this is and Cronenberg, we're talking about that. I'm going back to it. Like, so I don't, people always said Cronenberg was cold, right? But this movie's physically cold, but I think there's a lot of warmth and tenderness in this movie.
Yeah,
And
like
I
the
think that
warmth
I'm so
transfers
glad he
right
did
through. The
this.
Fly,
Because
like the Fly is like one of the
Yeah,
most like
but
the Fly
but
is
before this-
like it is our like Bride of Frankenstein for the
I
80s in terms
I
of
think Rabbit
romances.
too. I think Rabbit is
Oh yeah,
underrated in its
yeah.
emotional impact in that movie. But you know what I mean? People would suggest that. And they also would suggest that they said he had a lot of bad male leads. And you go back, Art Hindle's okay. I mean, but you got Oliver Reed and Samantha Egerton, and they're fucking amazing. So, and then Rabbit, Marilyn Chambers does amazing in that movie. But I do think Stephen Lack obviously is the one that pretty much stamped that on his entire fucking career, that he can't get a good male lead in this movie because Stephen Lack is actually just not really an actor. Like,
Yeah, I think he's I think he always has terrific male leads. I mean, whether it's Jeff Goldblum in The Fly, James Woods in Videodrome,
He's
I mean,
great.
he sells that part. I mean, it's
Jeremy
terrific,
Irons
you know.
and the Dead
Jeremy
Ringers
Irons,
in
I
two
mean-
roles is
I mean,
phenomenal.
early in his
So-
career, he had issues, I think, but after a couple movies, but I think Scanners is the one that everybody just assumed, but that he had great female leads and bad guys, but then he always had issues with the lead star guy. But you know, I always think sometimes when you put the lead guy as kind of a milquetoast or bland character, as long as they do their job, I think that's supposed to be the surrogate for the audience. Like I made it kind of like, I think Kevin Costner is always the surrogate for the audience. I don't think he's ever there to steal the show. I think he's there to, hey, I think you can relate to me better if I'm just kind of bland and he does a good job, because that's hard to do. But like,
Dave, you need to get
he's
out
never
of
trying
my
to steal
head
the spotlight.
right now. You're
Am I
literally
wrong? He's never trying to
you're
steal the spotlight.
regurgitating points that I've been saying for years right now,
Yeah.
like unsuccessfully to my friends where I'm like that. You know, he's great. He anchors the performance, but he's not the person you're paying up. Like it's always like you mentioned, like when you're talking about Scanners, like the beauty of that movie is Michael Ironside is so villainous. Like I don't want a powerful like lead protagonist in that movie because the antagonist is so brilliant. You know, you want to lean in on that, so it works from that. But yes, but to circle back, Kevin Costner, like a pure good. Do I think he's a phenomenal actor? Absolutely not. But does he deliver what I want in the role? Absolutely. One of the worst, and at the same time, best Robin Hoods of all time. Even though he's clearly American all the way right through it.
He's a surrogate, man. I mean, that's the funny thing too. Is also where was I getting at on that? He's like the RPG lead character, right? It doesn't talk. He's like Cloud or something. Like, you know, you put yourself in it. That character pops up, and you're like, "What's his name gonna be?" He'll be me. I don't mean as an insult. I mean as a compliment, because I don't think of any other actors that can really do that.
It's interesting, going back to Brooke Adams, she was actually picked. Christopher Walken recommended her for the role because they were like family friends before this, and they had worked in the theater together. So that I think that's what really brings a lot of chemistry to their parts. Like they just have so much great chemistry in that film. Yeah, I think it's really good, and you can see it.
You can see it for sure. In her eyes, she's got really expressive eyes, and I always make the joke that actors, if they're bad, they don't have passion in their eyes. You know what I mean? And she has the passion. I mean, and same thing like that. They made the joke about Walken putting all the makeup on, like in the commentary, because somebody said he had weak eyes, and it's like, so he added makeup to extenuate his eyes, and it's like, I don't know about that. That's pretty absurd, but I think that was Felcher talking about that, right?
Yeah, and then apparently it was the scene when Sheriff Bannerman is there, and Mark Irwin. Then he's like, "What's up with all the makeup? Like, you know, what's going on here?" In the other scenes he has no makeup, so he had to shoot in all the shadows and hide all the makeup. And if you watch that scene again, there's a lot of shadow, and he's hiding the makeup because they thought it looked ridiculous, but it was too late to do anything about it. So I thought he did a great job fixing that up.
And I think we move on to Herbert Lom, who, you know, I've always loved and I always enjoyed him. But this guy has had such a prolific career, and we're talking just strictly horror films. You look at, you know, the 60s with Phantom of the Opera, which is a great performance, the Hammer film. Great movie, too. It's a pretty good Hammer one. Pretty good rendition of Phantom of the Opera, too. But 1970 alone, like when I covered 1970 for 22 shots, and I think I watched 100 1970 horror movies, which is rookie numbers compared to what I'm watching now. Rookie numbers. But for 1970, I was digging pretty deep. And
where do you find the time?
Was in 4 movies in 1970, and of course, Mark of the Devil. And
infamous video nasty Mark of the Devil, which is how I
Great
first.
Movie.
I was going to say how I first like Pink Panther is how you get into Herbert Lom, because
not me,
you know.
It was Mark of the Devil.
Oh, like that's because you're American and you're dealing with people that are in the Commonwealth.
Peter Sellers.
If you're in the Commonwealth, you watch Pink Panther first. So
it's a holiday tradition. On Christmas, we all sit down and watch the Pink Panther.
100%. Like I've seen the Pink Panther movies more times than I can count, and I own none of them on physical media because I'm guaranteed I will be able to see them on the TV at some point during the year. But yeah, like Mark of the Devil's my first horror performance of him, and that movie scarred me. And I remember seeing it when I was maybe 12 or 13 on a ripped VHS because like it was banned in my country because it was on the video nasty list. A ripped VHS along with, I think it was about the same time I saw Faces of Death for the first time and I Spit in Your Grave. And of those 3 movies, that was the one that really got under my skin because of the kind of witch trial.
Yeah.
Like stuff in it is
it's
like,
aggravating.
And it's nowhere near as graphic as the other movies, but it was the way it was shot and his performance in it was maniacal. He's a phenomenal character actor, like genuinely incredible. And he plays the perfect role in here as well. It's like just the way he delivers everything all the way through, which is kind of partial curiosity, partial scientist, but also cares for Johnny as well, which like he managed to straddle those 3 different performances in a really interesting way.
He has some of the most memorable lines too. It wasn't meant to be, you know.
I killed the son of a bitch.
That's the best.
So well done.
As a man who doctor, and he goes through it. He like does all. He's an intelligent way to say it, and then he's like, no other choice but to kill the son of a bitch.
And when I think of the, sorry, Dave. Go ahead. When I think of the book, you know, when you see Dr. is it Weizak? I forget how to say his name exactly in the book.
I can see how it's spelled, but
yeah, but you know, at first, you know, they describe his hair's all white and crazy, and I'm thinking he's like, you know, Christopher Lloyd in Back to the Future, the way he's described in the book, and I'm like, okay, that doesn't really. But so I think what they did in the film, it just is so perfect. He messed his hair up a little bit, but you know, he's so much more realistic character. I think that's down to Herbert Lom, and you can see just the professionalism when he's on screen. Like he is just such a pro. You know, here's a guy, like you said, he's in Mark of the Devil, he's in the Pink Panther movies. I mean, he's in Just Franco movies, for goodness sakes, right? He was the warden in 99 Women, right?
But I mean, also, you know, 1970, he's Van Helsing, and I say this go on the record. I think that Just Franco's Count Dracula is incredibly underrated. I think it's a good
100%. Yeah,
I think it's great. Actually,
I enjoy it. I enjoy it very much.
Yeah, Just Franco is a pure good. Like you just have to ride the rough with the smooth. There happens to be a lot of rough, but the smooth is great. So
his 60s and 70s stuff is much better, and then his early 80s, and then we start getting in some rough stuff. By the late 90s, early 2000s, we're just
and those Sub Rosa films are pretty unwatchable.
Unwatchable. I think I've seen 2 of them, and I'm like, I don't even know which ones they are. They're just me struggling, looking at the runtime. But I mean, his career for horror films, like I said, was just a horror-based channel. It stems all the way to like Mike Michele Soave's The Sec, and he steals that movie too. So I mean, like the guy's just is amazing. Is one of the best of all time. And Dorian Gray too, as Lord Henry. He's my favorite in that movie as well. But yeah, just don't want to say how great Herbert Lom is. And I think next week definitely should talk about Martin Sheen, cast perfectly, you know, coming off
Apocalypse
Now and
Badlands. If you had to like smarmy, slightly evangelical Christian politician, Martin Sheen, like, see, as soon as he smiles, you know you've casted him.
When he hands the button.
Oh yeah, just like it's like as another performance that just feels like effortless. Like he is that kind of, not like I'm sure he was a very nice man in real life, but he just like instantly, it's difficult not to see like I think career politician when I meet him. The book gives so much interesting context to that character, like I mentioned at the start, which they managed to really condense down smartly for the movie runtime. But yeah, like to Dennis's point earlier on, could I imagine Martin Sheen kicking a dog to death in this movie? Yes, I can. So, and he doesn't do it. So, tick. Like, so great casting. He's a really interesting. I think as well, like Martin Sheen, like obviously can't help who his children are, and sometimes they've went to a bit more prevalence for other reasons. Really like a hugely interesting career as an actor. But he, to me, like when I think about him as an actor, I often think about the Stillson performance, just because like when he's like at the end forcing his general to put his hand on the nuke detonator, which I'm no scientist or like weapon specialist. I don't know if that's how they do things. I don't know if it is you put your hand on a light and then all of a sudden you press a button and a bomb goes off. Sure, there's codes involved, but like that whole scene, the way he goes from and like menacing and intimidating to euphoric, telling his like vice president and his people that the eagles are in the air, or the missiles are flying. It's an incredible performance, even down to like the flashback we get post baby lift, where he does look like that's a great scene as well. He just like he nails it. But the scene of him kind of in the black room with the headline paper and the gun in his hand, it's an immaculate performance. I don't see any weak links at all in it, surrounded by other great performances. So someone else talk about Martin Sheen, please.
Yeah, and it's funny when you say about that one scene and when they're, the missiles are flying in that great scene there, that line where he just raises his voice, "Put your goddamn hand on the machine or I'll hack it off and put it there for you." That's all improvised. That wasn't in the script. He just said that, and it's just one of the great lines too, It's so good. Yeah, he I mean, for someone that's in the film for only maybe half the film, I think he comes in halfway through, maybe even later. I can't even remember.
Like
an hour into it. Yeah, I mean, he almost steals it when he's there. I mean, he is just terrific in that, and he just perfectly captures that evil kind of politician, that slimy evil politician perfectly.
I set up as well because he's mentioned earlier on in the scene where the reporter wants him to make a prediction. So I like how the book's obviously it's building up to that moment all the way through, but the movie's also conscious of that as well. So it's bringing up at an earlier phase, knowing that there's going to be a payoff later on, which is smart in the storytelling. So it's not like things are being hacked wholesale from the script for the adaptation. They're still very conscious of, well, this is going to play a part later on in the the last third of the movie. So
and casting Martin Sheen is really intelligent because Martin Sheen's a clean cut guy that looks like he could be a politician, but he also has had a career before that of characters that have like underlining violence or just actually very violent characters that are also charming at the same time, like all the way back from The Incident, the train one, which is a great movie, and of course Badlands, and then Apocalypse Now. So it's like this guy has the capacity of violence, but now it's just hidden under this thin veil. And there's something particular in me that can't stand these type of guys that are politicians that want to have this whole blue collar persona about them, like I worked really hard. This is what I did in my life, and they don't. They lifted a rock once, and then they fucking like. For example, I don't even want to say this because it's not. But so we had like I'm not going to say my company or where I work for, but basically we had a new CEO come in, and he came in just to prove a point. He worked the hardest job for one day. It's like, buddy, anybody can do anything for one fucking day. These guys do this for 30, 40, 50 fucking years. You know what I mean? So it's like it is what it is. But that idea that you could just see the facade of these people so obvious, you know what I mean? Like, and it drives you crazy when you see it and nobody else sees it. Then you start questioning your own sanity at that point. Like, you're like, am I crazy or is the world crazy? No, everyone's wrong. That's right. It's like Skinner. No, the children are wrong. I'm right. But that idea is just he's perfectly cast.
Yeah, and that's what's so. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say the populist message that he is espousing in this movie, which I think even in 1983 probably felt quite out there and very much of a book. Like very much like American politicians thought is actually by 2026 standards not that far off how people are talking now, which is slightly worrying. Just
Actually, he's
a tad,
tame.
but
I'd say he's tame.
he's relatively tame. Yeah, like I'd like he'd be considered moderate, I think. But like there's the way he sells that all the way throughout the movie, and his interactions with Olga, he knows when to turn it on. He knows he's aware of the room that he's in, even when he's like that menacing scene where he's threatening the guy in the warehouse. Like all those particular scenes, as an actor, he slips into it, but it never feels like he's putting on a hard man image, to be intimidating. It's like that character exists within him, and when he's shaking hands, that character exists within him. He's like they say the best quality of a great politician is being able to speak to anyone in a room, and that person feeling that when they're speaking to them, all their attention is on that one person.
It's also
and that's what you get from it's what you get from Martin Sheen all the way through this movie. Every interaction feels like it is the most personable, like invested your conversation he's having with any one person at one time, it's what sells that performance. It's how someone like that, with all the things he's saying, gets to the position he's in, which is 2 steps away from running for Congress, and then in the future, like 2 steps from the White House, and then 2 steps from Armageddon. It's like that through line right through feels natural and feels real because of the way he delivers it in the movie. Lesser actor, like not convincing at all. You give me someone that doesn't feel like they could, in the same sentence, kiss a baby on the forehead and have a ticket tape parade.
You give me a Kevin Costner, and then we got some problems.
You put Kevin Costner in this role. I'm like, he's not.
He might actually do all right in that role, to be honest.
That general's not like. I don't know. I always go back to that movie, Mr. Brooks, which I love with Kevin Costner, but it also helps that William Hurt is also like absolutely evil. But yeah, that's what I mean. I think the way that Martin Sheen is able to adapt through those scenes effortlessly without necessarily the baseline performance is all the way through it. He's just turning up different aspects throughout the conversations is what makes that role work. If I felt like he was being intimidating, that scene that Dennis mentioned where he's ad-libbing, if I felt that was forced and not organic coming out that character's mouth, that scene doesn't work for me. But it does feel like to the point where I didn't know he'd ad-libbed that. I just assumed it was in the script. So that's how good it is. So,
yeah.
I mean, there's a couple other people I do want to mention quickly. We could just talk about Anthony Zerbe and Tom Skerritt, who are both classic actors, of course. Anthony Zerbe, I'll never ever forget from Omega Man, and of course, Cool Hand Luke. He's just a bunch of stuff. He always makes the movie better, and he does a great small performance. But he's like a likable rich guy. You know what I mean? Like so many rich guys, you're like, what an asshole. This you're like, I like this guy. I can't help but like this guy. He's got charisma, but he's also a realist too. He's a business guy. So, but he seems likable.
Yeah, just likable that made a mistake in the film, So
100%.
That's going to haunt him his whole life.
Yeah. Well, that character's broken after that. Like, we need not see him again on the screen. He is broken. And he's went from being such a confident, assured character up to that point. Like, every decision is, he's weighed it out. He knows how to interact with people. He's interacted with Martin Sheen before and shook hands, but he knows the measure of the man.
Exactly.
All the way through it, and he makes that like Tom Skerritt is it a Stephen King adaptation of Tom Skerritt, isn't it? I mean, there is a thing where I feel like he's the most main character that's ever made. You know what I mean? He feels like he's interesting. He's a actor's face who I now, when reading Stephen King, put in roles that he probably would never play. I just like he's brilliant in there. I like the fact. I think we mentioned this before about how they broke the movie up. There is a whole thing that they could do with the serial killer aspect of this movie, which would actually undermine a lot of what you get here. I think what's interesting about it is how they managed to condense it down and still deliver the points that they need. And a lot of it is in his performance as someone who is overtly skeptical, but at the same time willing to try anything because he's at his wit's end and there are no leads. That performance is really, really like when he's pleading with him in the family home of, like, you have this thing, you can do this for me and all the rest. And the fact that he's not prickish about things where when Walken shuts him down, weirdly, like when Walken lays out, this is what you're asking me to do. This is like God's plan. Look at where I am right now. When he lays it all out, he does the right thing, which isn't press the issue. He goes away, but that stays with Walken to the point where he will then make the decision to help out. he's a great, like, you can't say enough good. He's just a solid actor with so many screen credits. It's difficult to point out the ones that are your favorite. He's just great in everything.
And he almost didn't get that role. I think Cronenberg wanted Hal Holbrook for that role originally.
Oh, wow, right.
Would have been good too.
But yeah, I think so too. But Dino De Laurentiis said, "I've never heard of him." So then he cast
That's bizarre.
Tom Skerritt, which I thought was funny. And for sure he cast Tom Skerritt because he was in De Laurentiis produced Fighting Back just a year before.
82,
So
great movie.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. So I think that's where he probably got the role through that.
Yeah.
I'm making an assumption here a little bit, but I think so.
I do want to mention, just we're talking about Fighting Back because I don't get to mention him, Pat Ryan. He only did like 5 movies, but Pat Ryan pops up in that movie. I love Pat Ryan, trauma guy here. But he's great in all the movies.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. I know there's a bunch of Canadian character actors because it was, that deal then. He said, I didn't just cast them because they're Canadian. Cronenberg said, I cast the best actors I had. And there's some familiar ones in here. The newspaper guy that they pressure, he's in Videodrome. And
Peter Dvorsky.
Yeah, he's got a nice
Toronto actor.
Yeah. And you should know more about this. What I do want to ask about Sonny, the actor who plays Sonny. He's he's in a couple Cronenberg ones as well, and I actually think his performance and the way they portray him in this, I like better, especially at the end where like, you get the guy with the camera, and he's like, yeah, whatever. Like he's like, I'm done. I'm done with this. That was too much.
Yeah.
I think that's such a good, more realistic way. He's just completely disgusted with himself and everything now at that point.
Yeah, I don't know too much about him. Mostly for was it Jeva Kovacs, I think was his name.
I think you're right.
Something like this. Yeah. He's just a character actor from Canada. But what I like is in the book, they were all part of the biker gangs or whatever. And in this, you see like he has some sort of shady background, but you never know. He's got that long leather jacket. He's been somewhere. Like he's a tough guy. But in the book, you never see that here in the film, which I think is great. But he's good.
In the movie, he kind of reminds me of like if Adam Carolla or Norm Macdonald was a villain. He's got that kind of vibe, right? Like a tall, lanky guy. But like in reality, like on paper, you're like, oh, that guy can't fight. But like some of those tall, lanky guys are actually incredibly dangerous. The wiry guys.
And the scene in the warehouse where Martin Sheen is harassing that one guy, that's Les Carlson from Videodrome. He played Barry Convex in Videodrome and tons of other Canadian films. A lot of Bob Clark films. I think he was the reporter in Deranged as well.
Oh, wow.
So long since
that's Les Carlson.
Underrated movie.
Yeah.
Deranged is
like, remember,
totally
he kind of breaks the fourth wall and there's a reporter coming in Deranged. That's Les Carlson, too. So another Canadian actor.
I didn't know that was him off the top of my head. I would have never guessed that unless I looked it
up.
And
the one that I was surprised about was Helena Udi. She plays the mom in the World War II footage when she puts. That's the woman that gets impaled in My Bloody Valentine on the shower head.
Oh, fuck off! Really?
It's her. Yep. A few years later, I know. That's all just local Canadian actors. Yeah, which I was surprised. But you see her now in that film, and that's her. So
and you know what's
and then go ahead, Dave.
Oh, I was just going to say that scene, that World War II flashback, they put a lot of money and effort into that scene just for the.
That's what I mean, like you can talk about producers cutting budget and all the rest. There's stuff that they do in this movie they don't have to do, but I appreciate the fact that they do that because that isn't like you see. Well, that doesn't look like a kind of woo sort of flashback. Like someone spent time there, choreographed it out, put the money into it for that effect. For what is ostensibly a 10-second shot or something. It's like it's not a long sequence that they could have not just done sound effects and it's in like the other version that you were talking about, Dennis, with a different director doing it in such a way where it's all in his brain and you don't see those images. You could totally do that way. Dino De Laurentiis is financing that, and that's what adds to the movie.
100%. And you actually believe the visions. You're suffering with Johnny, like you're like, okay, there's weight to these visions. It's not just him describing it. And that scene actually too, Cronenberg originally, when they were starting to do that scene, he wanted the tank to bust through the wall at one point, but they're like, oh, that's not really going to work. So they did this other take, which was shot at an abandoned brickworks in Cheltenham, Ontario, just kind of near Toronto. Yeah. Apparently, a lot of movies have been shot there using the same abandoned brickworks factory. Yeah.
So I do think this movie probably was well received. I don't think anybody typically disliked this movie. Can you imagine somebody writing a bad review for this movie?
I imagine if you were invested in Cronenberg's earlier work, you might be head scratching and wondering why he's taking it. But I can't. Once again, if you look at like some of the early Cronenberg reviews, aren't exactly glowing and fresh with like. Well, I can only speak from the UK perspective. You know, a lot of these movies were seen as nasty little movies. That I imagine like that the kind of I can imagine even like the idea of Cronenberg adapting a Stephen King works being something that maybe raised an eyebrow. I can't imagine like if you watch this movie, even then you don't like you can't one not appreciate the craft, two appreciate the performances. I think this movie is an hour and 40 minutes and it flies in. Like this is not a long watch. Like its surprising use of exposition is really well done. Its delivery, its character arc is really good. Like all those things to me would make it something that I would imagine people would enjoy. However, I also know that people in 1982 didn't enjoy The Thing. So, like with that context, I don't know how a movie like this is received against it. But like you mentioned, Dave, contextually, this is a great year for King adaptations.
Yeah,
Cujo did well. Christine did well. So you kind of got to think.
I actually think
maybe
in the next year is the first year that we get a first kind of crummy feature-length King adaptation. And I do not hate this movie, do not get me wrong, but Children of the Corn is not up to snuff with these other movies. It's just not. It's just not nearly
Timeless
as
not
good
being
as the other
kind
ones.
for that movie either, I think.
No, it's okay. The opening is amazing and the rest of the movie's all right.
Yeah, I agree. It's not the same. Not the same. It's a much lesser film. Yeah. Yeah.
And not cheap in a good way. Not like cheap like we're gonna go batshit crazy because nobody's watching us cheap. You know what I mean?
And I think, like, I obviously don't know where Ebert and Cisco like went on this movie at all, but the fact that there is a strong emotional core from the like there is drama in this movie would make me think that critics would relate to it more. So, Dennis, I don't know if you obviously saw it at the time, but you're probably more enlightened than us. Like, does that weigh out, or was this movie not considered great?
I financially, I don't know. I mean, I think it cost $7 million to make, and I think theatrically, I don't know if this is North American numbers, but I think it made about $20 million. So it's still a tidy, sum of money. So I think it did well, and critically, I didn't look at the reviews, to be honest with you, but I don't remember it being. I think people were surprised, and like you said, the emotional core of the film, like it's just people could relate to it because at heart, it is kind of a love story. If you look at it more deeply, within the context of a supernatural thriller, horror, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's a little bit of a mix of everything. So unlike something like The Thing, which was so bleak and so nihilistic, like I can see why that flopped, but. Yeah. Even though this is like emotionally too, at the same time, it is bleak in its outlook, but it still has a heart to it and that emotional core. So I think that's why the film really still, resonated with audiences back then. And, you look back now and people still refer to it. And I still think it's one of Christopher Walken's best roles, and especially from that era.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Dogs of War was the same year too, wasn't it?
I think was that 80. I think that was 81.
Okay, that's okay.
You also think about political thrillers as well. So the book's written, what was it, 79, right? So and that comes off the back of like a highly charged decade of Nixon and all the stuff that comes with that as well. And you also think about like the 70s in terms of political thrillers as well. It's like the decade is like awash with them, granted, in the latter half as well. Like the fact that this movie moves into the 80s but somehow straddles the idea and political kind of turmoil and concepts that like America was specifically going through from the 70s, yet lands perfectly in time for the Reagan era as well, notwithstanding the assassination attempt on him. It's once again it's kind of geniusly placed. Also forward thinking, not that I imagine anyone thought at the time to kind of capture where we are kind of now. But when you think about, if I take a step back and think about some of the great political thrillers of my time, like Dead Zone's definitely in there. Like Genre be damned, it's just it's a great example of how they can tie those things in, and a lot of that leans into how it manages to handle the last 25 minutes. It still elevates it as a movie that sits within that as well. I wonder if there is. We mentioned about the drama being something that like critics could like hook into as well, but I also think that if you go in with that perception of Cronenberg, like you mentioned, Dave, Cronenberg is known as making cold films without human characters, without like leads that you can relate to and whatnot. I imagine people went in with expectations that were maybe not at the highest level, and I would hope that they came out surprised by what they saw. It's a very handsome. There's another word I would use that I don't often use with horror movies, but it's a very handsome movie as well. Like it's just like everything seems to just have a nice place and suits very, very well, and the craft is like evident on screen. And it's also something that, you know, moving forward, we all talk about in terms of when you look back and you look on these movies and the King adaptations as well, and what ones work and what don't for different reasons. But I also think you can look back, and the 80s is sometimes known as like a decade for like some of the greatest like outright horror movies, but also at the same time movies that got inherently goofy very, very quick. And the back half of the 80s is awash with movies that like almost replace like human dynamics and performances with over the top ideas and effects. Like somehow you get a movie which is surprisingly understated in parts, that really leans on performances but delivers like weighty questions. That the idea of, and the central core of that end part is, if you knew someone was going to do something that would kill millions and you had the opportunity to stop them now, would you do it? Is something that I think we can all relate to, even though none of us will ever be in that position. It's an interesting thing to put in a movie. Interesting idea to put in a book, but I think that's the thing for me. I think when you look at like the Stephen King movies that surround it, but specifically the way this movie lands, the performances and the direction as well, and all the small steps in between, it's like to me it's a no-brainer now that it works. But also I feel this is a gamble for David Cronenberg. I think this is one of these, I'm used to doing things within like my bubble where I write and I do these things. The Brood's like one of my favorite Cronenberg movies ever, but the Brood is such a raw movie. And then you see him direct this, and it's like it's so refined and polished, but not less a Cronenberg movie, which is kind of remarkable. Once again, my idea got kind of lost in the thought process there. I'm going to hand it over to you, but I do genuinely like. I hadn't watched this movie in a couple of years until you mentioned it, Dave, and I've watched it 3 times in preparation for this. Jeez. And that's 3 times in the last 3 weeks. I've watched it like almost once a week, and I'll tell you right now, I would probably watch it again tomorrow. I do genuinely find it's just a great movie, like front to back. I don't know if there are many movies that deal with subject matter as kind of aloof as this at times, but also with performances which are, it's a heady concept, and it, like we mentioned before, it's kind of tragic by the end. Don't know if I want to just be watching tragic movies once a week, but I did it for this one. I really enjoyed it, so I will be quiet now because I've talked for like 5 minutes. So
I think you nailed it, Duncan. I enjoy this movie very much too, and I might be a little bit biased towards it just because I saw it in the theater. It was my first Cronenberg film I saw in the theater. But you know what I like about it, especially coming from that, like you said, the latter part of the 80s. You know, it's a decade of excess. You know, this is the exact opposite. It's not excessive at all. Like, even if you look at Mark Irwin's photography, you know, at one point, I think in his commentary, he says, you know, he doesn't do any of that look at me photography, you know, fancy tricks and everything. It's just simple. It's nice. You know, he has some occasional shadows, but it tells so much. It's just such a beautiful, simple movie, but one that just holds up to repeated viewings time and time again. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I've seen this movie, whether it's on video cassette or cable or, you know, DVD, Blu-ray, 4K. You know, I think we've all done that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a terrific film, and I don't know if Cronenberg, I think it's one of those films that is always going to be one of his top 5 for me, really. And he's done a lot, but I think it still holds up, after all these years.
I want to do a quick thing. No long talks about it. Just name which movie you like better, and that's it. So out of these King adaptations,
he does this all the time, by the way, Dennis, and he's going to throw it out there, and he's making it sound like it's an easy choice. No, this is the thing. He's like that.
No explaining yourself.
Let's play a fun game where I put you on the spot and make you make agonizing decisions about movies you love. Right.
All right.
So
we'll go Duncan, then Dennis. Carrie.
I love Carrie. Right. What was the question? Did I love it more than this? Or
yeah.
I love The Dead Zone more than Carrie.
Dennis?
I'll probably have to say Carrie.
I think I'd take Carrie too. Salem's Lot.
You're both wrong. This is better than Salem's Lot.
Dead Zone.
Dead Zone 2. The Shining.
Shining's like my favorite horror movie, so I'm going Shining. Sorry.
As much as Stephen King hates it, I'm going to put The Shining as well.
We can't pick against The Shining. I mean, come on. Cujo.
Dead Zone for me.
Yeah, I'm going Dead Zone.
Dead Zone. Christine.
Oh, Christine. That movie keeps going up every time I watch it. Christine.
Christine for me.
Christine for me too, which is rare. I think we're the only 3 that would ever pick Christine. All 3 of us. That's wild.
So good,
but that's close. That's real close.
Yeah,
because they're very different movies. But Christine is a mini masterpiece. I think it's terrific.
Every one of those movies is 4 out of 5 stars or higher. That's crazy. Mm-hmm. That's how early his career. All those are great. Like I would say, those are all top 5s of their year, if not more. And then we start getting some like Children of the Corns. It's even worth asking. You know what I mean? And same thing with Firestarter, the movie that Carpenter got fired on and made a movie twice as good as, and came out first. Whoever fired him from Firestarter is a fucking moron.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like I always go back to it. As much fun as I have with it, there is a hubris of Stephen King where, like in the trailer from Maximum Overdrive, he's like that. If you want to do something right, you gotta do it yourself. And that movie is a ton of fun, but you can kind of see
Maximum Overdrive.
Oh, it's so much fun. But at the same time, you can take a step back and go, yeah, there's maybe better horror directors out there that have handled your stuff a little bit better. So.
Creepshow.
I think Creepshow has 1 week installments. So I'm going to go Dead Zone. So
I would probably say The Dead Zone. As much as I love Creepshow, I adore that movie. I was obsessed with it, when I was in, high school or junior high. But like, it's The Dead Zone. Yeah,
I'm gonna pick Creepshow, but I don't think I don't know if it's a better movie. You know what I mean? Like, do you ever do that?
Go with
I don't know if it's better, but this is just one that I'm more close to.
I feel like it's sacrilege, and I'm actually saying that because I do love Creepshow. It's one of my favorites of that decade. But
do you guys want to do Cronenberg?
Oh, you son of a bitch!
We don't have to.
Go for it. Come on, we're here. When else are you going to have this conversation?
Do it.
So. All right, we're gonna start with Shivers.
Dead Zone's better than Shivers. Oh, he's thinking. Dennis is thinking. Yeah. See, I told you he would do this to you. He's not a nice man.
Dead Zone.
Dead Zone. I'll tell you why I was thinking, because Shivers, I saw that on pay television when I was a kid, and I had no idea it was Cronenberg. And that opening just haunted me. I'm like, what is this insane movie? And that's why that movie has a bit of a soft spot for me as well. And then finally I found out it was Cronenberg, and I'm like, this is one messed up dude. I was probably 13 years old when I saw that, so I had no idea what was going on.
Rabbit.
I'm still going Dead Zone. I think that, like, if you put both movies in front of me, I would probably pick it. I'm only saying that because I watched it 3 times in the last 3 weeks. But Dead Zone before Rabbit.
Same.
Going Rabbit, but I'm wrong.
Yeah. The next one's not a fair fight for me. So
The Brood.
The Brood. I think the Brood's maybe on a good days, maybe my favorite Cronenberg movie.
The Brood.
The Brood. I agree.
Yeah.
I think The Brood's his best.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite, at least. Scanners.
I'm going to Dead Zone over Scanners, and I hate myself for saying that. So I love Scanners as well. I really love Scanners. So
I'll say the Dead Zone as well.
I agree. Videodrome.
I also love Videodrome. I'm going to regret this later on. I'm going Videodrome over Dead Zone, even though I don't think it's a better movie. I have seen Videodrome more times. So
I'll say Videodrome as well. I think
Dennis,
that's
you're my hero.
It's the quintessential Cronenberg film for me.
movie.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's just that you can watch that and you'll find new meanings and new things and surprises in that movie all the time. I think it's terrific.
And I haven't seen Videodrome in a while, so I'll go Dead Zone, but it could change.
Okay.
I just, and then we got, of course, The Fly.
I mean, The Fly. I'm gonna go The Fly over the Dead Zone just because, like, The Fly scarred me. Still scars me actually. There are so many scenes in that where I'm not sure if I'm repulsed or if I want to cry. Show me another filmmaker that can do that, and I will shake his hand. So The Fly.
Yeah, I'll have to say The Fly as well.
Agree with The Fly.
Yeah.
Dead Ringers.
I loved it. You're now making this really difficult for me. I love Dead Ringers. I think Dead Ringers is maybe one of those ones that's not spoken enough about. So much so I actually enjoyed the TV adaptation as well, which I probably shouldn't have, but the 6-part miniseries was really, really good as well. Do I think Jeremy Irons is... I'm going to go the Dead Zone over Dead Ringers. I don't know if I agree with it now I've said it, but I'm going to go that way.
I'm going to go the Dead Zone. Yeah.
too,
I think Dead Ringers is amazing, but it's one that I haven't seen in quite a while. So who knows? Things can change. But at this moment, I would say Dead Zone.
I watched Dead Ringers and I was like, oh, it's a great movie. I'm never watching that again. It was one of those where it was like, I don't need to see that again. Like, it was like, Naked Lunch.
I have a soft spot for Naked Lunch. I'm going to put Naked Lunch above Dead Ringers. I think it shouldn't work nearly as good as it does. So
I'm putting Dead Zone ahead of Naked Lunch. Yeah,
me too. I only think I saw Naked Lunch once, and I don't think I knew. I was like the Simpsons gag, right? Like when they walk out, I'm like that wasn't what
so many. I've
be.
watched that movie a ridiculous amount of times as well, and I can't tell you exact. I came to it much later on in life as well. I never saw Naked Lunch until I was in my very late 20s, and then became borderline obsessed with it, and I don't know why. Still to this day, I think it shouldn't. That movie should not be filmable, like at all. And then when you know the story about Cronenberg is basically rewriting the adaptation of that whilst playing Dr. Decker in Nightbreed, like at the same time, it's just like timelines all over the place. This shouldn't work. It's just nuts. So,
Crash.
You keep going. Like, what are we doing here?
Crash is probably the last one.
I love the fact that Crash is getting a full reprisal now and people are actually acknowledging that it's really, really a great movie. I would pick up the Dead Zone before I pick up Crash. So
yeah, again, I'm still biased towards the Dead Zone, although I remember seeing Crash opening day here, and it was seeing that on the big screen opening day. That was quite amazing because here, unlike in the US, it was uncut here. So, when they showed it, but yeah, that was something else.
Yeah, Crash is pretty great, but Dead Zone. But
yeah.
Is there anything else we want to talk about when we go down in the Dead Zone? Anything else?
I don't think. I mean, I think we covered even the locations and everything, and I know a lot of those were shot here in Canada, in Toronto, just outside of Toronto. Niagara on the Lake is just not too far from Niagara Falls, and that doubled for New England. That's where the gazebo was, which they built for the film.
Yeah,
and now it's still standing. Yeah.
Well, I think they had to tear it down recently.
Oh, did they? Okay.
I think so.
I haven't been to Niagara on the Lake in a while, so I don't know.
You would know, but I think that they mentioned maybe it was up until like the last couple of years or something like that.
And I think the scene where Martin Sheen, where it was like the presidential estate, that was shot here just north of Toronto at the what's it called, the Eaton Estate, just in King City, which is just north of Toronto. and that was owned by the Eaton's department store. And Eaton's was like a long-standing department store in Canada for like 133 years. They went under in 2002, but that was like their estate. And I think Death Weekend was shot up there too. William Fruitt shot Death Weekend there. I think that, yeah, it's the same kind of location. You know, you can still go there and you can ride your bike on the property and stuff, so it's still there.
Yeah, that's an underrated one. Hopefully we get a nice stateside release. I got a German import and not trustworthy German import, the NSW, whatever the fuck it is.
I got the same one. I got the same one, Dave.
Along with a couple other movies. I got like that and Black Roses and a couple other movies, but and I think we're good. Do you guys want to do any plugs?
I think so.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is, and I mentioned that a couple of times through, and at the risk of being someone completely foreign, which means I'm allowed to say things that are not necessarily popular in North American contexts, is, I mean, the reason I think the movie has went through a couple of reappraisals, but is more commonly now being viewed with kindness from audiences anew, is not just because of all the many reasons we've listed out, but because of how real it feels to where we are now in our current political climate. Wherever you are, like the interesting thing about it is the idea that the true horror of this movie is that, like, the idea that democracy is the thing that underpins great civilizations could be the same entity that would elect someone as potentially evil as Martin Sheen is the thing that, if you take a step back and you think about even more, it makes your head hurt. But then from 83 to where we are now, that's kind of where we are. Regardless what country you're in, it just seems like no choice is the right choice, and any choice you make leads to another bad choice. So I love that as a concept that sits behind this movie. I think it's also the thing that will ultimately make this movie feel timeless. I think there's not going to be a situation 10, 15, 20, 40 years from now where the Dead Zone isn't going to have pertinence in some level, some country, some situation where something has arisen or there's a political climate in which it fits, which, I mean, is the greatest credit you can give to any movie, really, is a movie that, like, spans generations because its central message is something that's relatable. So, that's my closing thought.
Yeah, I think the film's very prescient, with everything that's going on in the political climate today. But I think another part of it is just that whole central love story of the film, which really what it is. And I think that's just timeless, really. And I think that's why the film endures after all these years still too, And I think that's why I think it's going to still continue to bring new people and introduce new people to this film. Yeah.
There's a small glimpse, I love it, we've not spoke about it as a scene, but there's a small glimpse of what that life might be for Johnny when he's obviously slept with her, and they're in the house and she's making dinner for the father and they're all on the table, and that 1 minute sequence of what could be the life that he probably dreamed about, he always thought back when he was with her before the accident, and the movie handles it in such a deft way that it's the moment that, like, from that moment things pivot before they've pivoted as well, but it's that anchor point where from that point in the movie everything changes. It's when he starts hunting the serial killer and all the like all the stuff goes, but you get that one moment about the center of the movie which is just something which you want. It's the anchor, it's the thing you want to hold on to. So yeah, Dennis nailed it. So
yeah,
sure.
You're 100% right.
And great artist. If you ever notice the writers and the filmmakers, their movies get better and better with age. They don't date themselves. Like, I always think George Romero and Carpenter and those guys, their movies just always remain intelligent, different meanings, different So, do you guys have any plugs?
Yes. Check out Podcast Under the Stairs, which has returned after a lengthy hiatus in which I couldn't be bothered. I mean, for context, Dennis, my show is an old show. It's been on the go forever, and I've like 1,400 episodes. So I took some time off, and then what did I do with that time off? I started a completely different show, along with my many others. So the ones that I would recommend, Podcast Under the Stairs is back. At the moment, it's trawling through series collections of movies that I sometimes like and sometimes don't like from 88 films. So I'm doing the slasher classics and the Italian collection movies.
Okay.
Some of those are worthwhile. Some of those are eye-opening, and I can start to realize why they were never released in the UK. And the other one I would mention is the show that came out in the interim, which is B-Movie Blitzkrieg, which is where I inflict a series of different genre B-movies on a dear friend of mine, and we do half-an-hour reviews where we pick out what's good, what's bad, and all the stuff in between. So you can get both of them wherever you listen to podcasts. So, and once again, Dave, thanks very much for inviting me on. Always a pleasure to do these, and pleasure to podcast with you, Dennis. Hopefully, sometime again in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Not too many plugs. I just wanted everyone to know that the Blue Thunder Blu-ray from Arrow Video just got released, and I have a essay in the liner notes booklet in that. So that's about the only thing right now. Maybe a few more down the road. But again, thank you for having me on, Dave. It was a pleasure. And Duncan, awesome. I loved it. I hope to do this again in the future. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for doing it, guys. We're out of here.
Goodbye.
I love you.
What about my question, Sam?
Huh? Oh, you mean the one about Hitler?
What would you do?
I don't like the sound of this, John. What are you getting at?
What would you do? Would you kill him?
All right. All right, I'll give you an answer. I'm a man of medicine. I'm expected to save lives and ease suffering, and I love people. Therefore, I would have no choice but to kill the son of a bitch.